So today we are going to talk about contrast. In general, contrast is something that varies dramatically from something else. And in design is that key element that helps users to actually be able to focus on a particular element. Most of the people actually think that contrast is just applied to colors, but contrast is everywhere. And as designer, we can actually create contrast in multiple ways. So for example, using different typography size and typography weights and styles, as well as talking about the proximity of the elements in the design, or even shape size and style. So there are many, many different ways that we can actually create contrast in our designs. So let's take a look into some of the portfolios that we have received and see if the contrast is actually working in there. So here in this first project that we see here, this app design. So whenever a contrast is being clear, things like the color that is being given to a particular element, in this case, this call to action, as well as the prominence of the label or things like the border of these lines in the elements, can actually enable users to understand the state of the components. Is it active or inactive? Is it clickable, as well as is it a primary, secondary, or tertiary action? What is happening in this design is that most of the elements are given a blue color. That is creating issues with the contrast, because whenever we give a similar color to different elements that are having different hierarchies, as well as different intent, it won't really help users to actually be able to focus on what is most important in the screen. Now let's take a look into a different project. So for example, this one that we see here, even though the designer has actually used a wider range of colors, the same issue is happening here. So all the elements are given a different color, and all these colors are actually fighting for attention. So it's going to be very hard for the users to actually be able to focus on the most important information in this dashboard, as well as it's going to be very hard to understand what the primary action is here. So let's take a look into the last project that we have. So this one is actually a very nice and balancing example on how can we create contrast in different ways. So for example, here there is a high contrast made in this tagline, which is kind of taking all the attention, because this is having a very different size. As well as another way to create contrast here is on the shape size and styles. So probably users will find this as the primary action because of the size of the call to action and the color. That in contrast with this other call to action, which is a secondary action, and is having a different style. So what is happening here too is that all these elements that I have mentioned before are being more enhanced with the treatment of the background. Even though it's a photography, the way that has been treated is actually making all the elements to pop up, and that is increasing the contrast in the design. So this is a nice and simple example on how can we actually create contrast in multiple ways. So the main takeaways of this session is that first, contrast is actually not just, it doesn't just apply to colors. It can be created with multiple things. So always feel free to play around with typography sizes, styles, weight, shape size, style, as well as your background, even the proximity of the elements in your design. The second takeaway will be the overuse of one single color, as well as multiple bright colors, can actually create issues with contrast. So always be very careful on taking the time to set up a very balanced palette of colors that you can use across your design.